We begin in New York, where UN officials have been meeting with member states who have suspended vital funding to Gaza. Canada is one of many nations who paused funding to UNRWA after 12 of its staff were linked to the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. But the UN says 2 million Palestinians absolutely depend on UNRWA's work. Bob Ray is Canada's ambassador to the United Nations, and he joins us now from New York. Ambassador Ray, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much, David. Good to be with you.
You were in this meeting yesterday that the Secretary General, Mr. Guterres, called with the donor nations that have suspended their funding for UNRWA. What can you tell us about that meeting and what the Secretary General said to countries like Canada to try to get them to keep funding UNRWA?
Well, it was quite a long meeting. It went on for well over an hour. Very candid discussion between the member states and the Secretary General, and I think it was a necessary meeting. I actually talked directly to his office on the weekend saying it was important that rather than exchanging press releases, we sit down and start talking with each other directly about what's going on. And so I think it was a good conversation, but we're in a difficult situation. And I think everyone needs to understand it from the humanitarian point of view, from what's going on on the ground. It's clear that the situation is still extremely serious, that there's a lack of humanitarian supplies being provided in Gaza, and that is something that we need to continue to address. And the Secretary General said there's enough money to keep doing that now, but obviously if the suspension lasts for a very, very long time, it's going to be very difficult. So we all understood that. And I think it's for your listeners, it's important to know that there are 15 countries in total that have said that they are pausing or suspending, whatever word you want to use, the funding to UNRWA. In Canada's case, we are continuing to expand our funding on humanitarian supplies to organizations like the World Food Organization and the World Health Organization, who have access to getting into Gaza and who are able to provide supplies, as well as the other money. That's the $40 million that was announced yesterday by Minister Hussein. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that supplies keep going. And that's the critical thing I think we need to underline. But at the same time, the Secretary General said, well, he was looking at two investigations, one of them immediate, being carried out by the independent office inside the UN organization, which deals with all complaints and issues around the organization's problems, if there are any, and that's being organized and that's taking place. And the Secretary General said he'd asked for a report in 4 weeks, no less than. And all of us, the member states who are in this position, said to the Secretary General that we wanted to have an ongoing relationship with him that would allow us to get updates with respect to what's going on, because we need in-time responses to this investigation. It's not something we want to see, carried out, taking forever.
Well, can I just jump in there? I know you want to talk about the second investigation, but just some clarity on that first one. The 4-week investigation that the Secretary General outlined, because you laid out the timelines, the diminishment of capacity to deliver aid and supplies and financial resources versus this quest for answers. What do you want to see out of this first 4-week investigation? Like, what does Canada need to see to change its posture on pausing the funding?
Well, it's not a posture. I wouldn't use that word.
I didn't mean that in the pejorative, but your current position.
Well, first of all, we are doing what we do in connection with what a number of other countries are doing. And I think it's important for everybody to understand that. This is not something that Canada's gone off on its own and said, this is what we're going to do. We work together in terms of the support for UNRWA. We talk to each other, we engage with each other, and we share information and perspectives, and that's going to continue. The group of countries that are in this position, as well as other countries, because there are 4 additional countries, it's not up to me to name them, they'll name themselves, that are considering their position in light of what information has been revealed so far. And so it's not up to us to say now, well, this is what we need to know. We need to know the truth. We need to know what we know when we know it, and we need the UN to tell us that as soon as they can. And I think that's important. That's an important benchmark for us in terms of the ongoing process of not only our own internal discussions internal to the government, but also our consultations that we have with other governments. This is not a unilateral process by Canada. This is one that is carried out in conjunction with a number of other countries doing similar things. And the second thing is there needs to be a longer term perspective on this issue, which the Secretary General has also promised. We cannot have organizations that are at risk of being infiltrated by groups that are either terrorist or violent or have some other axe to grind. The UN's neutrality is an absolutely essential element of its work. And we can't have a situation where something that, like what happened or appears to have happened on October the 7th ever happens again. There were atrocities committed on October the 7th, and we all need to say that. So those people who say, oh, this is, don't worry about it, just keep going, just do what you're doing, and don't try to improve the situation, I can't agree with that. We have to do what we have to do, and that is make sure that people who are held accountable for what's happened, make sure that we're taking steps to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And I think that's a responsibility that we have to ourselves, to each other, to taxpayers, and frankly, to the people who live in Gaza. It is essential for them to know that the organizations we choose to work with are organizations that have real deep integrity. And it's important for everybody to get to the bottom of what happened, but also, and this is where this is the hard part, to make sure that we're not ignoring the needs of the people who are in need of help, who are the beneficiaries of what it is that UNRWA is doing in Gaza.
Well,
and I think that you have to know.
Well, that's kind of where I wanted to go next. So the Secretary General says within 4 weeks, the initial investigation should conclude. This longer issue of looking at how UNRWA works, and because you've heard the allegations from Israel that Hamas has largely infiltrated, the workforce of UNRWA, particularly inside Gaza, but in the meantime, while that is being dealt with, there is this humanitarian crisis, and aid groups are saying that even by giving them extra money and diverting money, as Canada and other countries are doing, they rely so heavily on UNRWA as the infrastructure inside Gaza, to store their facilities, deliver their aid, and store them in their facilities. And they warn that even pausing the funding for a short period of time could accelerate this disaster. So how do you get around that, knowing how important UNRWA is to the aid community to get supplies in?
Well, as I said before, the fact that some countries have decided to do what Canada has done, up to 15 of us, doesn't mean that UNRWA stops working or stops being UNRWA. Other governments may come in and do it. I mean, obviously, the Secretary General was not only talking to the donor countries in the last little while, he's been talking to other countries saying we need more money. And so that's something the Secretary General has to do. But we're doing what we think is necessary to ensure that what we see as a serious problem has to be addressed. But we're also doing what we believe is necessary and what we will continue to think is necessary to make sure that the supplies get in. But let's look, David, for a moment at the broader picture. In the month of December, Canada called for a humanitarian ceasefire. That decision still stands. We believe there needs to be a ceasefire. We believe that there needs to be a greater supply of goods and services to Gaza. And we think that the implementation of getting the additional number of amount of material into Gaza has to be accelerated. We support that. And we're doing what we can to fund that, together with a number of other countries. So it's not an easy situation, but I think it's also important to recognize that Canada has not taken its eye off the broader needs of the situation, the fact that we continue to think that a ceasefire is necessary. We continue to think that more supplies have to get into Gaza, and we're doing everything we can to supply those groups that can actually supply, like the World Food Program. Like the World Health Organization, and we've given extra money to OSHA, which is the UN agency which is coordinating relief. So we're not turning away from this overall situation at all. We have to keep our eye on both situations, which is exactly what I think Canadians would expect their government to do. And that's what we're doing.
Just as a final point, Ambassador, I know there has been some discussion in the United States from some Republicans about permanently ending the relationship with UNRWA. Canada has more or less done that in the past under their former Harper government. Pierre Poilievre called them a terrorist organization this weekend. I know you're not going in that direction, but could Canada's relationship with UNRWA hinge on the outcome of this investigation? Is it possible Canada could sever its relationship depending on what the UN finds here?
I know that it's your job to try to get me to speculate on things, because that then becomes the headline. This is not my first rodeo, David. So I'm not going to feed the beast. I'm not going to speculate on
I'm not trying to trap you. I'm legitimately curious if these are the stakes of what is happening here, because the allegations are serious and being taken seriously.
I want to keep trying to get you to come back to this question. It's not just what Canada does. It's what other countries do and what that signifies for the future of any organization. So it's important for Canada to understand, Canadians to understand, that we want our money to go to organizations where we can count on their integrity and count on the integrity of what everybody is doing. That's what people expect. UNRWA has a 75-year relationship with the countries in the Middle East that is based on a resolution that was passed by the General Assembly, endorsed by Canada in the late 1940s. So we need to come to grips with this fact. It's not just Canada standing up and saying, this is what we're going to do. It's up to us to understanding this is a big world out there. We have to talk to other countries. We have to engage with them. But Canada's commitment to ensuring the integrity of our funding and the effectiveness of our funding, that commitment is absolutely rock solid. And that's going to continue, as it will for the other countries with whom we discuss these questions. Many of the European countries and obviously our friends in the United States and elsewhere, we're all looking at this situation in a way that will ensure the integrity of our funding and its effectiveness, and to deal with the impact of this severe humanitarian situation. There are 2 million people in Gaza without houses, without homes, without jobs, without work, and in many cases without food. And that's something we can't lose sight of throughout this crisis.
Bob Rae, Canada's ambassador to the United Nations. Thanks for joining us again today, sir.
Thank you.